Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke. I'm so glad you're here. My platform brings you the most up-to-date, groundbreaking information from some of the best minds in the natural products industry, as well as some amazing voices from outside the industry, all of them with a great message, great stories to share. But let's face it, everybody has something they can add to the conversation. Hey, if you like what I'm doing, please consider giving me a like, a share, or a subscribe. Please do. You know, when you get to the YouTube channel, click the subscribe button. Gets us a lot more focus and gets the word out a lot better. And we really do appreciate it. My guest today is a regular guest with me, and it's getting to be so much fun. Bill Chioffe's with us today, and I know you're going to love this. And as you can read from the information about him that's in the prologue, you'll see that he is an amazing talent. So let me welcome my guest because we have great information today. Hey, Bill, welcome to the program.
Hey, Dr. J, what do you say?
Oh, not much. Excited. You know, anytime I get to talk about mushrooms, I get excited. I love it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I had a conversation the other day with some friends of mine, and, you know, they listen to my radio show for probably 30 of the 40 years. And they said, you know, we got to give it to you. You made talking about mushrooms. You gave it a good attempt. And you were there, and it's like nobody was listening for all those years. And I said, I know. I said I was beating a dead horse. I said, but now they're listening. So maybe we did a little of a preamble. Maybe we did lay a little bit of foundation. But hot topic today.
Yeah, right on. That's exactly the experience. I think the founder of Nammex, Jeff Chilton, has echoed to me too. Like, for years and years, it was just like very little interest and blips and blurbs when studies would get published on reishi or something. But it's great to be back again with you, Jeff.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate and respect what you do. There's so much information out there. There's some misinformation out there. There's some, definitely opinions out there about mushrooms, and, all of it perfectly good. I will preface the whole conversation today with saying, functional mushrooms are valuable in any form. I think that there are things that work better. I think there are things that are maybe more effective, maybe things that give us more benefit. But I look at it this way: if people are using a good quality, reputable, transparent product coming from a company that's thinking about the consumer and the quality of their product, then I'm perfectly fine, because I think it's important for us to be able to feel comfortable with our nutritional supplements. And that goes across the whole gamut of the natural products industry.
Absolutely.
So let's start this today, maybe for people that are, just putting their toes in the water, basically with functional mushrooms. How would you describe a functional mushroom?
Well, that's it's interesting to categorize anything, really.
Right.
The functional mushrooms, there's many that cross over with the regular culinary mushrooms that we eat. Shiitake mushroom is one example, and I just had a flush of shiitake mushrooms come out of some oak logs that I inoculated. And I think functional mushrooms have come to the forefront. And I think it's part of a more interest in consumers about how to maintain their health and wellness on a daily basis with superfoods and powerful nutrition that comes packed in foods. And so with the functional mushrooms, you have some that were eaten as foods, like the shiitake, maitake mushrooms, or oyster mushrooms, and cordyceps, stroma have been served in soups in different traditions for quite some time. So you have a tradition of consuming these as foods, but then also in some type of wellness protocol, let's say, depending on where and who was recommending what be used. So the implication of functional is that they do something, right? They have a function. And so all of your mushrooms from, shiitakes to this is a baby reishi, Ganoderma lingzhi mushroom. And it's quite hard. It's like very
Wow.
hard. If you were to see it, and if I were to shine it up, it would almost look as if it was like a plastic toy, and has a luster. There's the Ganoderma lucidum, referring to the luster of the shininess on the top of that. But so yeah, the functional mushrooms all have various amounts of polysaccharides, and now we know them as beta glucans. And that goes for even agaricus. So agaricus, or white button mushrooms, Agaricus bisperus, the mushroom portion is what we eat and consume, and that has quite a nice nutritional profile. In addition to having beta glucans, some companies are working with specific parts of that, like the stems that get left over when you trim that mushroom, can be processed into special chitin-like products.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you would consider agaricus a functional mushroom, but there are certain products that are quite high in vitamin D that are made from just growing agaricus mushrooms. So they definitely fall in there, but I don't see people requesting white button mushroom. I think I, as you know, am an herbalist, and I rely on tradition to inform how my specific role in herbalism has mostly been on the preparation of materia medica in different formats of how a raw material gets processed into a finished good, or a good that's going to be included in formulation or by itself. Yeah, I'm always looking at how traditional preparations were made, and what were the factors that were included in the selection of the materials for whatever preparation was being made.
There's so much involved in the mushroom category. And I mean, there's a lot of learning and a lot of education that still needs to be done, even by us that are in the industry, and even
Mm-hmm.
for us that are very seasoned and very weathered within the community. There's still a continual amount of knowledge that has to be, you know, dealt with. And the thing about it is, it, we tend to be a little arrogant in our country here, and we think that when we hear about something that we're the best and we're the first and all this stuff. And no, many times, many of these herbal supplements, many of these functional mushrooms, many of these herbs have been used around the world for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
And, here we are, thinking that we're the first one to be using this. So there's a lot of knowledge to be gained by the experience of using these over the years. And I think today, more than any other time, with the standard of health and the things that are out there right now, I think we need to start adopting some of these principles that have been tried and true for a
Mm-hmm.
very, very long period of time. And mushrooms, definitely that category.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, it's reflected in the different cultures that have typically consumed more mushrooms in their diet, whether they were consumed in from farmed mushrooms or wild foraged traditions in Eastern Europe, in Asia, and across the globe, really. And now here, so we can no longer deny that there's a beginning tradition here. Mushrooms have been cultivated in the United States for quite some time. And in Pennsylvania, there are specific areas that are that are very robust and rely on that industry. So, and it's spreading as they're mostly growing agaricus white button mushrooms, and branching out into the specialty species, which is really, and in the history of Nammex, where Jeff Chilton started, was at a large mushroom farm in Washington State, and who started incorporating shiitakes and enoki and some other mushrooms back in the 80s that really weren't even on the marketplace for sale, other than probably some farmers markets. But So that began, and that was a very large commercial farm that was doing thousands of logs inoculated to produce these mushrooms. So yeah, I think it is interesting in our space of natural products and integrative wellness that it is very trendy, and it follows along though with the basic needs that are required from uh, the public and the practitioners recommending dietary supplements and specific types of diets and wellness regimes to their um, clients. So,
I have to tell you that I've been a big mushroom consumer for a long time. And obviously, I've dealt mostly with mycelium over the years, and I've been comfortable with it. And of course, my research has led me closer to a little bit more fruiting body. I know
mhm.
Kokora is now using your products in their product. And I have to just show you this. These are the five
Nice.
the five products, and I'm taking them. I'm taking all five of them, just because I fell in love with using these products. So I'm
Yeah.
using them all, and I feel very, very comfortable. I don't have anything negative to say about using a mycelium product. I think that I think it's
Yeah,
perfectly fine.
yeah, I think you raise a good point, and so just basic basically how these shiitake mushrooms got grown might be a good example. It's not really how, I'll say it is how some people would grow these commercially to harvest them
Hmm.
and sell them at market as a farmer. But typically, shiitake logs are made of sawdust that's inoculated in the grow bags that is formed in the shape of a log and then sterilized in an autoclave because when you inoculate these substrates, and so this is a key term to remember, substrate would be akin to your soil. If you're growing a plant, you're growing it in soil, or in hydroponics, your substrate is water based nutrients. And so, with typical mushroom growing, as you've seen, if have you been to a mushroom farm
I
before?
have,
Like
yeah.
yeah. So if you see the soil casing that's on a white agaricus mushroom, there is a soil casing over the top, but that's the substrate that um, and it starts with grain spawn uh, normally, or some type of spawn, could be on sawdust. In the case of those shiitakes that I grew, the spawn was on wood dowels, and even some of the grain that had some mycelium attached to it was clinging to some of the dowels. And those are purchased from a place here in South Carolina. Shameless plug for Trad Cotter and his mushroom operation, because he has some strains of shiitake that fruit at different temperatures that he's identified. And he's very close to where I am and has a strain that does well in warmer temps. And so, yeah, it's just so those were put in there months ago into a log of oak. And as you know, Asheville, where I am right now, was hit very hard with a hurricane. We had a lot of downed trees, and there was plenty of wood around to inoculate with various things. And so, so at any rate, yeah. So when you're growing it in a commercial operation like the we have at Nammex, the substrate for the reishi, for instance, is an actual piece of wood log. It would look like a log you'd put on your fireplace, and that's a piece of wood that's discarded for whatever reason. That can't be used for lumber, timber, or anything else, and that gets sterilized. It has to be sterile because you want the culture that you're inoculating that log with to outcompete everything that's there. In nature, this reishi would drop spores, and those spores would go down onto the roots or some type of organic matter on the forest floor, or even get transported by an animal that ate some of the mushroom and pooped it out and put it down near, and would start to form mycelium. And the mycelium are thread like hypha that have come together to form a network that starts to consume cellulose and ligninous parts of the woody material and debris as part of a nutrient base with it has sugars in it, and the mycelium can consume that to carry out its life cycle. And when you've inoculated in our case, they're on wood logs. So it would be a sawdust log, or in the case of those reishi, an actual piece of wood log. Those are sterilized in autoclave, inoculated, and then those logs are put out by the farmers in rows, as you've seen them in some of the grow houses. And they will take various amounts of time for different species, and as I alluded to before, different temperatures at which these will fruit out. And in China, you have to realize this has been done for centuries.
Yes.
So it's well known through the traditions and through the specific regions where these are grown outdoors, when to start the process for each of these various functional mushroom species so that the optimal fruiting conditions can happen when they would produce a fruiting body. Which, if I went to the grocery store and asked them where these were, I wouldn't call this a fruiting body. I'd say, where are the mushrooms? If I didn't know where they were. Everybody knows they're in the produce section, but I think, so I just think that there are some, I'd say, twisting of the language to use the term mushroom, which, we commissioned a survey of 10,000 people to ask them this question of what is a mushroom, and showed various pictures of inoculated grains and of this, and the majority agreed that this is a mushroom, and this is what the mycological text will refer to a fungal organism as the entire species that's growing there, genus and species, but the above ground portion is the fruiting body, or the mushroom. And this is what we can see, and this is what I could harvest and cut off of that log to consume. And this is what has been consumed by humans. And these are what they've found as relics dried on various, let's say, like Otzi, the famous cave dweller that had various mushrooms on their person. And so these are from Neolithic times. And so I think that these have always been around. I think what's interesting is that now we're finding out with both mushrooms and mycelium, so that they do have unique properties. I think that I prefer to consume something that's one is the original article, let's say. So in my own herbal use, for instance, even I've even gone away from more concentrated extracts to powdered herbs and teas, and as close to the way the herb was growing as I could get it. I still use extracts as well, but I think the longer that I stay doing these types of things and paying attention, to things that my mentors and elders have taught me, is that the whole plant is the medicine. And Echinacea taught us many things about differentiating the activity between the root and the flowering portions of the plant, including the mature seed and all stages of the floral development, and have a vast array of chemistries. So I think my contention is that when you start to call something that is a mycelia fermented grain product a mushroom, you're confusing the consumer. And so with Nammex, we felt as strongly as this as to submit a citizen petition to the FDA. And in that petition, which is still on the Federal Register, you can find it, we clearly define in mycological terms the different parts of a fungal organism. And the below ground portions, the mycelia, those types of products are grown at quite a large volume in bioreactors, in a liquid bioreactor, just a large chamber that has a liquid nutrient broth in it, and you would introduce mycelia into that liquid culture and do a fermentation of pure mycelia. And so this has been done for quite some time. And even in food production, if you've ever seen in the grocery store the corn products, QUORN, it is a type of a fungi. It's not a mushroom, it's an imperfect fungus, which is a type of a fungus like penicillium, which would not ever produce a mushroom, right? And so in that case, you have something that created a lot of mycelia that had a rich protein type structure and some solid structure that could be formed into a food product. And so these types of things are being produced in the marketplace. And there was recently a company, well, I won't mention the name, but there was a class action suit against a food company for calling their product being made from mushroom root. Okay. And it was made actually from a form of mold that is a fungi called Neospora crassa. And so it had nothing to do with a mushroom, which is, again, like this, a mushroom. But it was a fungal based product, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's not dangerous, but it's just another example of how when you twist the language and don't use the proper terminology, it just ends up with confusion on the end of the person trying to purchase it. So, and I think there's a lot of things that do need to be cleaned up with labels in general. But I think, look, we rely on mycelia. We have a lab full of it going all the time. It's stored in petri dishes. It's stored in liquid culture. That's, if you've ever grabbed me for a Zoom call and I had to pop into the Nammex lab to to do something for a better internet connection, there's always things in the lab that are under culture because we need that and we rely on that to grow it out to study it, either to study its growth characteristics or to possibly even dry it out and analyze the chemical makeup of what we have for beta glucans, for alpha glucan, for ergosterol, for ergothioneine, and whatever secondary metabolites that we might expect to see in the mushroom. So, I think that the general conception is that a company like Nammex that relies on fruiting body mushroom extracts and that we are against mycelium, but it's not the case. The case is that what's out there now is not really, in our opinion, being properly characterized. There isn't a focus on the fact that you're combining a plant by virtue of the grain still being present and the mycelia in that product. So it's two things. It's a plant and it's a fungal base. And they're currently, those types of products, they're not separating the two. And, again, it's just a matter of properly defining them. And the FDA has a regulation that goes back to, I think 1976 was when it was instituted, calling out that if you are using a mycelia-based product, that you cannot call it a mushroom, because the average consumer's conception of what a mushroom is that it's this. So you must call it something else. And I always speculate, how did that come up with the FDA writing a food provision for that all those years ago in the CPGs? I can only guess that there was a food company that had an interest in mushrooms in a huge food product, like a soup, let's say, like a mushroom soup that you might have eaten as a child in a red can. But anyway, who knows how those things happen? But look, those products are there, they're being sold, and it just makes it difficult for us to explain when someone asks us what our substrate is. I think that they may be expecting that the substrate is included with the product, and it never is. When you harvest a mushroom, you cut it from the substrate and clean it. And often that substrate, anyway, for us would have wood or sawdust on it, and it's not desirable. So, and it is interesting that the substrate can affect growth characteristics of the mushroom. And most of the functional mushrooms, especially the polypores like reishi, those grow on wood, on trees. And so that's there in nature. That's where you would find them growing. But they can grow on other things in a sterile cultured environment where you inoculate a sterile substrate. And Trad, the person who sold me the shiitake dowels, he even does classes where he can show you how to grow mushrooms on cardboard. So it's possible. Just needs a nutrient source to digest and the proper conditions by which it would form enough hyphae compacted together to start to form a pinhead, then a primordia, and then a button, and then it would form into a full mushroom. And that's the reproductive cycle occurring, where it would produce the fruiting body, which contains the spores underneath here in the gills, which would, again, like I said, with the reishi, they're not coming out of gills, they're coming out of pores. And it's cool to look at this with a loupe, even like a 10x loupe or something like that, or a magnifying glass. You can actually see the various millions of pores, polypores under there. So that's kind of how the growth cycle of a fungal organism goes. And I mean, if you think of the type of white film that might form on the top of an orange, or it looks like mold or something like this, those are fine filaments of hyphae coming together, forming on top there that you see. And so I know it's nothing new. So products have been made, commercial products have been made from different types of fungal organisms for quite some time. I mean, penicillin, prime example. There are agricultural products. I remember one called Root Shield that was used. That was a lot of the organic products are bacterial type based things. This one was a fungi based thing, and it helped the roots resist certain types of pathogens, and it also helped them accept nutrients better. And it's a mycorrhizal treatment for the soil. And so, you wouldn't call that a mushroom. It's defined in the, CAS listing for that commercial product, Root Shield, as an organism. And I think it's a trichoderma. But so I think these are the types of things that I think about in terms of the broad applicability of these amazing organisms, which are, again, they're outside of the plant kingdom. And that's a tough one for me as an herbalist, because I have to do a certain amount of dissociation from what I've learned about plants, because this is a completely different kingdom. It would be the same way I would look at maybe how a lichen or a moss was still like, yeah, that's a plant when you would look at it, but like it does have a little bit different requirements for what it needs to thrive in its environment and maybe give back to the environment, which also is quite interesting about the mycorrhizal network in the soil and in the forests, which, I mean, the research is endless, and I'm very glad that there is this rising interest, because I think it is with the youth, it's with the younger generation to hold on to these ideas and to take the knowledge, because by the time you get to be like a codger like me, your ideas are fairly well formed. And that's something I work on all the time, is being open to new ideas. And so, I don't typically like to get into the conversation about which one is better or worse, but I do think it's clear. I'm an English major at heart, so I love the language, and words and definitions are very important, I think. And In this era, especially of AI and things that are, not well referenced, it's even more important to get at the genuine article. And so again, I just look at tradition. I look at what people have consumed, read the literature, and I think going back to the younger generations, I think that for me is the most exciting part. Would be, if I could specialize in anything, it would be in educating children and about the importance of this, and because I think they see it, they see that maybe we didn't do the best we could do for the planet while we were here, and now better well do something about it now. And looking at how these mycorrhizal networks and mushrooms and fungi exist in their natural environment can tell us a lot about recovery. I'm kind of interested to see what happens in the forests of North Carolina with all of the changes here. And anyway, I guess I'm totally open to other questions or things that you would like to explore and about this topic.
You talked about when you're growing the fruiting bodies and they're cut and severed from the substrate.
Mm-hmm.
It's that way. It's one of a prevention of actually bringing the substrate into the finished product, because it's actually the product on its own.
Yeah.
Or things that may be grown on a rice or something else that actually becomes part of the product. So it does actually bring different things to the plate.
Yeah, typically you'll see it on a dietary supplements panel when properly labeled as mycelial biomass of some type. Mycelial, insert name of grain here, biomass.
Got it.
And so when you have this biomass, it is well known, like I was describing in the mushroom growing, when you get a bag of spawn, that can be broken up to grow hundreds of mushrooms by spreading it out. Because like that bag of dowels that I got that looked like covered in white on the outside and then went right in the refrigerator to keep them stable. Yeah, that was all the mycelia that was on the dowels, and came in a little tiny bag, and I could inoculate like 5-6 logs all the way around with those, and to let it consume. What's really interesting is, like, when you do it in the wild like that, there's always a chance that like some other fungus or mold, something has already gotten in there and will outcompete what you inoculated it with. When you do it in cultivation and regular growing, you're starting with a sterile culture in a bag, or in the case of those reishi that are grown in China on the logs, it starts with a sterilized log, steam sterilized piece of wood. So yeah, it's just, yeah, I get really excited when I get a flush from a natural log that I inoculated. Most of the time around here, what happens is turkey tail grows on them. Like there's a whole bunch of that around here, and like that seems to crop up on the oak pretty quick when it's fallen.
So here's a question. I think it's probably in my mind, maybe with other people's as well. So let's say that you're cultivating mushrooms and you've cut the mushrooms, you've cut them off, whatever the mushroom is. Does that log or that substrate have to be re-sterilized again, or does it continue to just grow?
Well, like everything, it depends, right?
Okay.
So that particular log setup that I have here, this is only the second time it's flushed any mushrooms out of it.
Okay.
It's still quite solid. I think it would continue over and over. But typically in the larger commercial grows, even in China where they're growing massive amounts of woodier mushroom, they have it's anywhere between 2 to, like, let's say up to sometimes 5 flushes, but like usually up to like 3 flushes on a log before it's, and then yes, you can re-sterilize that and then regrow more mushrooms on it. That is not commonly done, mostly that becomes compost, organic compost afterwards, which is quite an interesting use for it. Farmers tend to like it for its physical properties, as well as adding some fungal content back to the soil. So I think but the point is that substrate is definitely not part of the finished dried product that gets turned into an extract.
It's funny, when I was raised in the Midwest and we used to go mushroom foraging every year, my grandparents, they would take us with like bushel baskets. And we would go back to the same woods all the time, to the same areas and all the trees and the stumps, and we would do the mushrooms and literally come back, and they would sit at the table and they would clean all the mushrooms and then put them up and do what they did. And I mean, it was just part of like the culture of that area. And of course they had their asparagus times as well, and that grows amazingly wild in Midwest, in Michigan actually. And but so I've been around this for a long time. I just always thought of it as a food, because every time you wave that mushroom, I just think about, how could I eat that? I'm just thinking, that's all I can think about, because I love mushrooms.
That's
so
what I'm
much.
thinking about, what I'm going to do with those. I'll probably just slice them up and throw them in with something tonight. But
No, I think it's wonderful, and I really, really just love the clarity, because I'm all about being transparent, and I'm all about giving people as many tools so they can make up their own minds. I don't want to turn ahead. I want to give people the information so they can turn their head whichever way they want to, but have the knowledge to do it wisely and in an educated manner. So, and I think one of the things in this industry, 46 years I've been in the industry, and the education process has changed a lot. We have a lot more to work with now, but we also have a lot more competition, and there's also a lot of other viewpoints, and there's amazing amount of opinions that are out there. So I like being able to give people a whole bunch and have the light bulbs go off, and they're like, okay, now it makes sense. Now I can make a decision. And I think that might be a place where we're lacking, but hopefully we're getting better. I'm trying to get it better.
Yeah, no, I think you're doing a fantastic job. You're a good interviewer, and you ask good questions.
Thank you.
And yeah.
It's just I used to get yelled at for talking when I was a kid, and now I get to do it. So it's it's a great thing.
Well, they train you in radio, right? Because you don't want dead air ever. So you need to keep something going, and there's often technical things that come up in radio where you don't have the cut that you're going to go to, so you have to keep talking. So.
Well, the funny thing is, most people say, I'm going to run out of things to say, and they go, but with Jeff's case, we're going to tell him to be quiet. So it's okay. It's all good. I take it as a compliment. So leave everybody today with, and first of all, thank you so much. I love our visits, and I know we've done also individually, we've done lion's mane and turkey tail. I'd like to do a couple more, and then put those into a nice series for people so they can really get a good understanding and a good idea of these mushrooms. But leave everybody with a thought for the day along the lines of what we were talking about today.
Well, I will, and I wish this was a traditional radio show, because you could lead into a song, because a song lyric is coming to mind, and it's from an artist that I think everybody should give a listen to. His name is John Craigie, and so this song is called Vondel Park, and the first line of it goes, "The bells in the Tower of Pisa are tuned to the key of C. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me."
I love that.
Then it goes on. So what I love about that, it's one of my favorite songs. It has a special place in my life, is that it leans into tradition. This guy's he's an artist, and he's a folk artist, and he's attuned. And as you see, if you listen to this song, it does talk about the love of tradition, and just I think so. What we were talking about today, I think that's kind of the theme for me when thinking about how I use any natural product or food is, what did my ancestors do with this? what did your grandparents do with the mushrooms? How did your grandmother, I'm thinking about how did she dry them? That's immediately when you said they started cleaning the mushrooms, because I watched my own grandmother do that. And now I wish I had paid more attention.
Me
So
too.
as a kid, kids are paying attention to, well, whatever they want to pay attention to at the time. And
No,
so that's
that's
why I think
true.
yeah. So anyway, a shameless plug for that artist that I just quoted a lyric of their song, but I think it's a great tune, and like I think, I appreciate you always ending with the thought for the day, because now I've learned, like, I got to think about this ahead of time, and I just happened to be listening to that this morning. So
I
yeah,
love it. I think it's
thank you,
great.
Dr. J.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to have you here. If you're tuning in for the first time and hearing Bill for the first time, make sure to go back in and listen to the other shows that we've done. You'll find all of them to be incredibly educational. Remember, go to my website, make it easy on yourself. It's drjeffreyburke.com. Tap on the Honest Health logo. It will take you to Spotify for the audio. That's the one I recommend if you're driving, please. Of course, if you click on the YouTube logo, it'll take you there and you can watch the interview. If you're there, press subscribe. You know how to do it. Just tap the button and bring your friends. I think this is a great platform to be able to have great alternatives, clear, honest, and to the point information so we can all get healthy, be healthy, and stay healthy. Bill, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful. Be well, everybody. God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.